So we are live. Good evening. My name is Himanti Bakchi and I am an independent researcher and a freelance communication trainer. I welcome you to the stories of tribal identity and culture that will explore the role of tribal literature and tribal representation in literature in shaping cultural identity and ideology. Curated under TMYS Review December 2023 in collaboration with the Center for Asia Pacific Initiatives, University of Victoria. We are also calling for submission of essays, poems, and short stories under the project. To know more about the submission guidelines and project architecture, please visit www.tellmeastory.biz. This evening, I consider myself privileged to have our esteemed panelists, Anand Neelkantan and Savani Shetye, who will shortly share their views and insights with us. The topics for today's discussion is Secret of the Tribals, Totemism, Magic, and Sorcery. Under the fiction, non-fiction, and poetry by tribal writers. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce our speakers. So our first speaker for the session is Anand Neelkantan. He's an Indian author, columnist, screenwriter, and a public speaker. He is known for writing mythological fiction and has authored 12 books in English and one in Malayalam. He follows the style of telling stories based on perspective of antagonists and supporting characters of a larger work. His debut work, Asura, The Tale of the Vanquished, was based on Indian epic Ramayana, told from the perspective of Ravana, the first book of his Ramayana series. It was followed by a series of books based on characters from Mahabharata and Bahubali. His books have been translated into different languages such as Tamil, Hindi, Malayalam, Telugu, Kannada, Marathi, Bengali, Gujarati, Assamese, English, and Indonesian. He has written screenplays for popular Hindi television serials like Siya Ke Ram on Star TV, Mahabali Hanuman on Sony TV, Chakravarti Ashoka on Colors TV, Sarfarosh on Netflix, Swaraj on DD National, etc. Asura was featured in the list of 100 books by Indian authors to read in a lifetime by Amazon Books editors. The book has sold more than 1 million copies over the years. We are delighted to have you on the panel, sir. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Our second speaker of the day is Savani Shetye, ma'am. She's an archaeologist by education with a specialization in ancient Indian history and culture. She has conducted thorough research on Kavi art of Goa and Karnataka. She has also pursued certificates from various organizations and institutes on the subjects such as archaeology of Buddhism, cultural heritage management, and so on. Savani ma'am has expertise in ancient Indian temple architecture and iconography. Savani has had privilege to work on various documentaries on history of Goa with Department of Information and Publicity, Government of Goa. She has also been part of many talks and outreach programs in history and heritage field through government as well as private sector. She has also been a visiting faculty to various colleges in Goa and is passionate about India, the land and her people, and is keen on telling the story right with due importance to India's civilizational ethos and narratives. We are delighted to have you on the panel, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. There's just some issue in the camera has gone out, but I'll join again.
Sure. So, till then, we can open the forum for discussion. I would request Anand Neelkantan sir to share your insights. Sir, over to you now.
Uh, Thank you very much. See, regarding the shamanism and other things, I don't know how far we can use these kind of terms in Indian context, because these are like, if you ask, there is a kind of judgment in these tones, where usually in the West, when these religions encountered, it always had treated paganism, animism as something, some kind of inferior and crude religions, and usually used to associate all these things with tribals and other tribals. And also, there is a kind of what you call a kind of looking down upon, saying that these are all crude beliefs or anything like that. But as far as Indian context is concerned, there are these borders. There are no such borders like what is tribal, what is animism, what is shamanism, what is mainstream, what is, because there is no established religion as such. So these things form a part and parcel of the mainstream religion. You cannot say this is the mainstream religion, this is the religion, and other things are all animism, shamanism, Totemism, and all those terms what we are using it. Academic purpose, people can use it, but as people who are living and practicing these religions, I don't think there is any exclusivity of like people worshipping so and so won't go and worship this, or the other way around. Of course, sometime many years back, until it was banned by our constitution, and before the temple entry proclamation and all, each of the community, castes and tribes, if you want to call them as such, had their own temples and their own forms of worships. But there was no, there could have been social prohibitions on which community can enter which temple, and which community can uh, are allowed to do certain things, because of the problem of caste system and other things. But there was no disrespect towards any kind of worship, or nothing was looked down upon. So now, when these kind of borders are slowly merging, of course, not enough and not fast enough, but when they are slowly merging, I think every community, every people are familiar with this kind of worships. And from where I come from in Kerala and all, these practices are part and parcel of many of the mainstream temples itself. There has, you can find the murtis of spirits like Ekshi, Gandharvas, and Brahmarakshas and all in the mainstream temple itself. Of course, sometimes they might be inside the temple, otherwise in the temple compound outside, along with the sacred groves. So all these things, there are no borders in India saying that this is a tribal culture or not. I'm not taking away anything from separate tribal identity or anything. I'm not even talking about the identity, but as a religion, as a form of worship, or the Hinduism, as we call it now, encompasses all forms of worship, including the so-called what do you call the shamanism. Actually, many of these things have the roots in Atharva Veda, or rather, Atharva Veda was a compilation of this kind of tribal worships and practices, which was codified and kept. But of course, no single book, not even the Atharva Veda, can codify everything, because India is such a vast country, and this could have been written many thousands of years ago. This kind of practices keeps evolving as per the needs of the society and the tribes wherever they are. So calling them and treating them as something separate, something different, and something exotic itself is something that makes me very uncomfortable with, because the religion which I grew up with had elements of everything, including whatever we are using this in the topic. So that's the first thing.
That was very insightful, sir, and I really liked the concept that when we create these boxes and people, or any kind of religion into it, we are certainly showing a kind of essentialism which is not appropriate in today's time and today's when we are saying that we all are following a kind of liberalism. So yeah, so I agree with you, sir.
No, it's not about the terms of, see, all these terms what we use. No, English is a language which cannot, which is not very useful in the Indian context actually, because many of the words have got different connotation, including the word mythology, including the word shamanism, including all these words what we are using now. It's very difficult to use these words and convey the meaning. They give a totally different meaning because English is a language which owes a lot to perhaps the 2000 years of Christianity, or at least 1000 years of Christianity in England. And many of the terms what it uses may not be suitable for our context itself. So, as I said, uh, this kind of worship, what they call devil worship, we don't have a concept of devil as such. There is no concept of devil in Indian context. These are all natural spirits, and every natural spirits. Take the example of Kali. Kali could be a Brahminical god. Kali could be a tribal god. Kali could be a fierce goddess, of course. Kali could be a fierce goddess. Kali could be asexual also in many contexts. Kali could be the form of extreme feminism also. So all these terms, even the words of feminism, this thing, that thing, none of these things can define what Kali is. And Kali is just an example. So Kali is worshipped in various formats and various forms by various communities in various ways. The same God, which you cannot find in, when you say animism, a mainstream religion like of the West, like Christianity or Islam. All these forms of worships will look in a positive way. If somebody is looking in a patronizing way, they look exotic, and in a pejorative way, it may look like these are all wrong and this is not the way to do it, and these are the tribals who are doing it. But in Indian context, these borders keep merging. No, Kali or even Shiva himself is both a tribal god and also not a, perhaps the mainstream, the Brahminical Hinduism has appropriated it later, but whatever it is, that itself has a history of 2000, 3000 years. So Shiva is worshipped in the Brahminical way. Shiva is worshipped in the so-called tribal way. There are thousands of ways of doing it, and the Hinduism itself is linked with so many practices of the so-called animism and paganism in it, uh, through the Puranas and other things. So these borders and these terms of oh, we are liberal, so we will not look down upon them, that concept itself is not there. So it becomes very difficult to define all these things using the terms which you use in English, or even to make this understand to a non-Indian. These
Certainly.
are the lived in reality, right? So any of us who have gone to temples, I'm not talking about the modern temples which crop up in every corner, the money making business, what it has become now. But the ancient temples, if you go there, you can find that all these kind of practices and the murtis go hand in hand inside the temple itself. So you can see the many of the temples in the south. They have the murti of Ghandakarna. They have the murti of the village gods also on the side. Even in many parts of North India, in Jharkhand, in UP and all, you can find village gods. And this ancestral worship also is there. People who have participated in some wars and have become matriarchs, they become gods. Their spirit treats you. So, where do you draw the border in India about what is shamanism and what is tribalism and what is a mainstream religion? There is nothing like that as such. Shiva himself is considered to have all the Budaganas walking around with him. All the spirits and Buddhas and Vedalas and Buddha, Preda, Pichacha is Buddhanada, right? So Shiva, who is supposed to be the main god himself, looks like a tribal worshipping. If you go look at it through the Western eyes, for us it doesn't look like that. For us, all are the part of, because Hinduism is a collection of, perhaps Hinduism is more animistic if you use a Western term, and perhaps these terms don't apply to India Hinduism as such. But just for the sake of clarity, I'm saying perhaps what they call as paganism. Hinduism is actually a collection of pagan religion. Hinduism is a collection of ancestral worship. Hinduism is a collection of spirit worship in practice. All the Vedas, Upanishads are there only for a small minority. In practice, how people practice religion, it is more animistic in nature for the most of the people. It's still a tribal religion if you want to look it through those eyes.
So we have here Nitin Kushalappa, or another speaker for the day. So he hails from Kurg, a region rich in oral lore. He has published various articles in Deccan Herald and other newspapers as well. He has authored 8 books so far, and mostly on local history and biographies. His latest book is a collection of children's stories based on South Indian folk tales published by Puffin. He is also the researcher for Kodava Virtual Museum and has done work on an old temple script. We are delighted to have you on the panel, sir. Thank you so much for joining this evening.
Thank you, Hemanti. So, yeah, so
So,
as Hemanti said, I'm the author of Puffin's this Puffin book called Dakshin South Indian Myths and Fables Retold. Sorry, is it my turn to speak, or you're just introducing me?
that's okay. You can share your insightful observations.
Okay. This is my latest book. This was published this year in February by Penguin Random House, Puffin imprint. It's called Action South Indian Myths and Fables Retold. It's a collection of short stories for children. It's based on South Indian folklore. So these stories are from different regions across South India, and since the topic for today is about the tribals and then totemism, magic, and sorcery, I would like to add that as when we speak of magic, there is the first thing that comes to our mind. It's about stage magic. So it's like this. This is the modern day magic. It's like we see all this. There are magicians on stage. They come on stage and then they trick the eye. They do this sleight of hand, and then they manage to fool the audience. So then we take it as a magic trick. But the magic that we are supposed to be discussing today, this is another sort of magic. This is the traditional magic. So this magic, again, this is with context to the tribals. So tribals, it's more of like when we think of tribals, we think of a primitive people, a primitive society, people who are more or less forest dwelling, isolated, and they are hunter gatherers. They hunt wild animals and gather roots and wild fruits for food. So that is the picture we have in our mind. But in today's modern day society, it's like more or less it's most of the tribals have come out. They are, there's at least in mainland India, there are no isolated tribes as such. Like they have come to terms with civilization to some extent. We can say probably in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, there's some sort of isolation, but otherwise they have been influenced by the mainstream. And so the beliefs of the tribals, that if it is not in alignment with the mainstream religions like Hinduism, the worship of the mainstream gods, we tend to call it as magic and sorcery. So I'm sure this today's evening, the discussion for today to be very exciting. And I mean, I've as far as I know, there's when it comes to sorcery, there's places like there's a place in Karnataka called Kolegal. So that's famous for it was supposed to be famous for black magic. And uh, um, in the present age, there have been many steps taken by social activists to eradicate this the backwardness of the region. So this place Kolekal, it's near Mysore. It's 140 kilometers from Bangalore. It was always in the news for black magic and sorcery, etc. Like there would be all sorts of witchcraft going there. There'll be human sacrifices being performed over there for the sake of uh, for if an individual wants to gain some sort of hidden treasure or something or the other. And also if people in southern Karnataka, if they want to, if they believe in black magic and they believe that somebody is um, putting some black magic on them and resorting to such things, they used to go to Kolegal and they used to meet the astrologers. So there, the black magicians over there to come up with a counter spell to help them against these black magic and all. So this concept, it's like it's it was there till the recent past. That's like as of now, as the years go by, people are getting more educated, and they are taking steps to do away with all this sort of what you can call a superstition. So, for example, there's the superstition bill that was passed by the Karnataka government in 2017, and before that, the Maharashtra government had passed it. So there are various steps being taken up to eradicate such practices. And in fact, I would like to add that in rural Bangalore, basically, like I live in Bangalore. So in rural Bangalore, there something like 10 years ago, there used to be these newspaper reports about children being kidnapped, or pregnant women being kidnapped, and like they would be sacrificed for the sake of some person would try to uh, who's trying to seek hidden treasure. They would believe that if they perform this human sacrifice, they would gain hidden treasure. So such things used to happen like something like 10 years ago in rural India. So yeah, this is what I would like to say about magic and sorcery. Also, this totemism. I would like to add that in South India, there's this people called the Todas. So then they have this. They worship the buffalo. So then basically uh, they are they tend buffaloes. They keep buffaloes, and then they milk buffaloes. They have these herds of buffaloes, and their entire lifestyle, it used to revolve around the buffalo. So then you can say that it's a totem over there. And then there are families in around rural Bangalore who belong to the farming communities, the Vokalika communities, and the Dalit communities. They are like, these communities are called Hosadevro, etc., based on the gods that they worship. They have they these some Each family has an association with a vegetable or fruit or some object. So then, if for example, there's a family which is associated with the bitter god, they have this belief that they should not eat that fruit or vegetable. So that is a concept of totemism that's seen in South India. So then, if there's a family which is associated with the watermelon, members of that family would not eat the watermelon. So totemism, it's there all over among the tribals of the world, and it's
How
seen
is
from
it different from totemism of not eating cow or worshipping the cow?
yeah, that's like
Why is it
totemism.
called tribal as such? No, it is like these are like a cluster of beliefs. No,
Yeah,
worshipping buffalo is a superstition. Worshipping cow is holy. Both are
it's not
either both
very
are
high.
superstition or both are acceptable. For me, both are
Super,
acceptable.
superstition is a very relative word. I would not say they are superstition. Like
Superstition,
there is that
if it's a
fake.
crime is committed, like human sacrifice, it is superstition.
Yeah,
Otherwise, every puja is a superstition.
right,
Every worship of any religion, whether it is in church or mosque, is either a superstition or a belief. So
correct.
we are, it is a tyranny of the majority, whichever majority it is, where our things are religion and other thing is shamanism, totemism,
Yeah.
and all those the words which you use. This is what I said. Sorry, Nitin, I not
No, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. It's just that there's that saying, one man's religion is another man's superstition. So it's like
superstition.
personally, I respect all beliefs. And about the cow, yeah, like basically Hinduism also, that's also a form of totemism. And we should respect all the thing, all traditions, all beliefs. And yeah, this, because the topic is tribals, like I would sorry, Hemanti, I feel it's a little offensive to say that they are tribals are into magic and sorcery and all that, because it's a little
Everyone
offensive.
is.
Yeah.
All of us
Yeah.
are. No?
So
If you believe, if you
so
can offer a coconut to God and pass an exam,
yeah,
I uh, I respect your belief. But how is it different from someone thinking that I can offer a mango to a
correct.
tree or some sacrifice a god to a village god is tribalism, and sacrificing it during Eid is organized religion. How is it? It's all same for me. No? I respect
Yeah.
both.
I mean, basically, we need to respect all beliefs as long as they don't harm others. That's
So we move
my take.
forward. Thank you so much. We'll talk about it in a elaborate way, and I take this forward to Savani Shetty ma'am to share her insights. Ma'am, over to you now.
Okay. So yeah. Yeah. So we in Goa, it's a small place. So which is my core area of work, Goa, or maybe area like Konkan and areas of today's Karnataka, but which were part of ancient Goa. So in my field work, what I because it's a small place and there were so many cultures in this such a small geography. There were like too many. It's like a mixed melting pot of many cultures together. So you have many layers, many influences. You have the typical Sanskrit or Puranic, influence or the Vedic ideas. At the same time, you have certain which are folk deities. And in Goa, we have many folk deities, which are common. You can see in Konkan also, which is Maharashtra, where you have the idea of Kshetrapal, which people may have seen in movies like Kantara, is very much common and it's very much dominant here. So one instance that I could share is even when people who were Hindus earlier and they had to forcefully convert to Christianity, the ideas of these folk deities continued. Folk deities or the deities of the village, which had their jurisdiction marked. And anytime you have to leave their jurisdiction or anything happening with your life, you have to inform them. So, for example, the Hindus would offer something like, say, a thick roti, which is so the roti is a very feminine form. So it is called as rot, which is a masculine form. It would be very thick that a normal human cannot even eat it very happily. Along with that, some liquor like country liquor, and you would light a lamp for these, protector deities, and you would offer anything else like BD or something. So even when there's a fortress in Goa, it's called Rashol Fortress, which was a Hindu town. It was also part of the Vijayanagar Empire. They used to rule on that fortress, and later the Portuguese took over. And as people were converted, uh, so areas like those who were Hindus earlier, they were not allowed to practice their old religion. So as they converted, they continued these worships of earlier times. I would not put them as tribal, but folk worships. And instead of roti, they started offering bread, and instead of a lamp, they started offering candles, and rest things continued. So which is worshipped even till today. So this is something interesting that we note in a place like Goa. So as Anand sir said, ki you cannot look at Indian culture with the viewpoint of what happens in West, where everything is a watertight compartment. It's an organized religion which has a rule book, which has some like a hierarchical structure and everything else, which is not the organized structure, is a tribal or folk or paganism. And in India, it's like a river mixed with many sources, and especially like a place like Goa, which is small in geography and many cultures which have ruled here. So we have influences of tribals, folks, ideas of folks from the Europe also have come here mixed, and we see that as we research in Goa.
I would like to add one point here. I mean, if I
Sure,
can, if I
sure.
may. So there's you mentioned Kshetrapala and the Kantara movie. So Kshetrapala, like my parents are from Cook. I was born in Cook. So in Cook also we have this. In the Kantara movie, you would have seen this. There's this boar spirit. So this spirit is one of the protector deities. So like that in the Tulu region, there is another spirit called Guliga. Guliga is more or less worshipped in many places across India. So he is considered to be a son of Saturn, Shani, and he rules a part of the day, etc. So in Cook, he's called Kulia. So every year, incidentally, I go to Cook every year, and during the month of July, around this time, middle of July, we go to our ancestral place, and in the farm, in a certain spot in the farm, where a trishul will be there, a trishul and a stone, which represents the protector deity, Kulia. We even today we offer chicken and alcohol to the deity Kulia. So this is the worship of Guliga, which goes on in the present age as well. And yeah, I just felt I should add it. Thank you.
There are
Thank you
around.
so much.
This is a
Sure.
part of the in Coorg, Tulu, and the northern Kerala. It's a part of the same what Budakola, the majority of the almost two three districts of Kerala, which has around 600 tayyams, which is a
Yeah.
it's Budakola. It's called Budakola in Tulu. It's called tayyam in on the Kerala side. Uh,
And
Almost 600 deities are there, tayyams are there, perhaps more than that, but at least 600 of them are there. Village deities are there, and including some Muslim tayyams are there,
yes.
which are worshipped in the sacred groves. So these are all the, I think these would have predated the present Brahminical Hinduism, and later both would have influenced each other, because a lot of the concepts, sometimes like the Buttapan and various other concepts, what we call, are linked to Hindu mythology also. So either way, it gets sometimes they are called Vishnu Maya Tayyam. All these things are very much linked to the typical deities, and each community had its own tayyams, or still have. They are all the practices which go on, and some of them are inside the temple itself now, inside the traditional temples itself. So there is no borders as such. What is what, and what could be done, what is not done. We go to a temple like Chotanikara near Kerala. That is a temple where the Devi is supposed to remove all the ghosts, the exorcism. It's a ritual of exorcism. So you can find an entire tree in the Kirkau. That is uh, a big temple is there, a little temple is there. The Kirkau of Chotanikara, you can find a huge tree where there are a lot of nails, where the people suffering from exorcism they come and they use their head to uh, put the nail inside the tree. They will hammer the nail using their forehead and do it. This kind of things are there in many parts of the country, not just in Kerala. This I grew up there, so that's why I'm saying. This is in the main temple of Devi, and in many temples. So these all, where do they? Where are the roots of these temples? They are all the so-called tribal roots, right? They are now part of the mainstream religion. So you cannot even say what is what. Who is a tribal god? How will you say? When Madam talked about Kshetrapal, but who is a tribal god? Who is not? We depends on the popularity of it. More people are doing it, or more TV shows have come. That is how we decide. Uh, we cannot decide, no, who is the popular god, who is the mainstream god, who is in Hinduism, or what we call as Hinduism, is a collection of all these things. Whoever you choose to be the god is a god, and there is no difference between whether you are which caste you are born to, whether you are a tribal, city dweller, or all. We all practice a kind of belief which could appear to be a superstition for someone else. It's left to us to who are we to decide what is superstition. Yes, of course, as Nitin said, if somebody is doing a human sacrifice or all these things, kidnapping people, that comes under crime, not under belief. As long as that is not done, I don't know what will you call magic, black magic, and how is it different from astrology? Astrologers may object, but ultimately, if you look objectively, how is it different from one form of looking at the future or influencing the future, and another form of thinking that something can be done? If somebody says that I will do this so and so puja in so and so temple, this will happen. That's a belief. Respect to that. Some other person says, no, you do certain rituals, you bury this egg at some place, something will happen. Logically, there is no difference between these two. Both are beliefs. If one can happen, the other can happen, or neither has any influence on anything, and it's just a belief. So this difference of telling one is a shamanism, totemism, it's a very un-Indian, and just trying to underline
Yeah.
that point.
Yes, sir.
Thank you
And
so much for your, insightful. These, small things we will talk explicitly, and let's move on to the question and answer session. So, Anand sir, we'll start with you. You have written a book, Asura: The Tale of Vanquished. There's said to be a counter belief pertaining to ancestry of Asura community as well. So, would you like to throw some light on this, reflecting on the religious
See,
practices?
the present day in Jharkhand, there is a tribe called Asur, as far as I know, who are worshippers of Mahishasura. But my Asura is based on, it's a countertelling of mythology, right? So I am telling it from the Asura, Deva Asuras, in that from Asura side I had told this. It has nothing to do with the worshippers of Mahishasura in Asur tribe. Maybe they are also followers of it. So I drew it from the entire tradition of Kerala itself is that it was ruled by an Asura called Mahabali, and it was the most. So we don't talk about Ram Rajya, we talk about Bali Rajya. In Onam is a celebration of that festival. So Onam is a celebration of equality, no caste, no gender disparity. There is no infant foeticide or infanticide or even child deaths. So this is the ideal which the Bali Raja had propagated, who is an Asura king. So the entire belief system of Kerala, whether we call it mainstream Hindus, tribal Hindus, non-Hindus, whatever it is about the equality of all people based on Onam, on which day the Bali, Mahabali is supposed to come and visit his earlier kingdom of Kerala, which incidentally, ancient kingdom of Kerala is from Gokarna to Kanyakumari. So even Nitin's place all will come in that, perhaps. That's a belief system. So the Onam, even Goa, Madam's place also, no, or borders of Goa, Gokarna to Kanyakumari, and even parts of Maharashtra has this belief where Belivadayami is usually celebrated, where Beli's Raja is considered as ideal, and it's not that anything against Ram Raja or anything, but traditionally this is what people have believed, including every community, irrespective of their caste or whether they are tribal, non-tribal, whatever it is. This is the belief system that Bali Rajas. So my Asura is based on that concept itself, a concept of Bali Raja and the Asura, Mahabali and the Asuras and Ravana and all those people as a counter telling. It has nothing to do with a tribal telling or anything. But of course, if you want to use the word tribal, the people in Wayanad has their own Ramayana. It's called Wayanad and Ramayana. Many of the Vanavasi or Adivasi community, what we call now, those Vanavasi communities have their own Ramayanas. But that is nothing new. Every community across Asia have their own Ramayanas and their own versions of Ramayanas. I had just put one among many versions in my Asura book.
That was very interesting to know. So my next question goes to Nitin sir. Please reflect on the magical superhuman creatures like elves, fairies, animistic gods, goddesses, etc. as characters in tribal narratives.
okay, so basically in India we have the Gandharvas, the Rakshasas, and the other mythological creatures. So then the demons are the Rakshasas, and then the elves and the fairies are the Gandharvas. I've come across stories about I mean, all of us we know many various stories about Gandharvas, Rakshasas, and all. In my book, I have mentioned. I would like to mention three stories in particular. Like there's one story on the Gandharvas. So then this is an oral story, and it begins in Kerala, actually North Kerala. There's the king of the Gandharvas. His kingdom lies in a place called Elimale, which is in Kannur district. So he has got seven
Yeah.
daughters, and this the sixth daughter, she is considered to be an avatar of the goddess Lakshmi. So when she comes of age, God Narayana Vishnu, he comes down to earth, and then he marries the sixth daughter of the king, and then the seventh daughter. There's this the entire tale. It's actually told in the Kodwa language, the Cook language. So this is a folk song, in fact. So a man from Cook, a Kodwa man, he comes over. He woos this girl, the seventh daughter. He goes to the king. He asks the king for her hand, and then the king gives him difficult tasks, impossible tasks, like he has to cross the oceans and he has to go to a tree and get some beetle leaves from that tree, etc. But then this person, he achieves all this, and then he gets to marry this daughter of the king, and he goes back. So then such sort of narratives are there in, I'm sure, like there are many communities which have such oral traditions. And especially like what we can notice is that the in the hills, these native traditions, they tend to stick around longer than in the plains. In the plains, they tend to get I mean, they get immersed with the mainstream narratives. So the folk and the there's a merging that goes on all the time between what is mainstream Brahmanism and folk traditions. So in that sense, in the hills, you find that the people of the hills, they tend to, like in the Nilgiris or in Coog or other places, the communities over there tend to hold on to their native traditions a lot more stronger. So the communities over there, they still have their own folklore and all that. Even in fact, there's the Maple community of North Kerala. They are the Muslim converts. They have their own folk songs, which they tend to sing during their weddings, etc. And there are the Irula communities who live in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka. They have their own folk songs. They have their own love songs and songs that are sung during death, etc. But as time goes on, we tend to lose out these traditions. These songs are forgotten. The elders, they pass away, and then the youngsters, they might not be interested in learning the songs. So these all tend to go away. So they have uh, these songs. They have these stories, many stories about all these magical creatures, about Gandharvas and the Rakshasas, etc. So then there'll be a Rakshasa, and there's one story in my book, my latest book, where there's a Rakshasa who eats humans. So then there's a princess who unfortunately gets caught by this Rakshasa, and he goes to eat her and all that. So such narratives are there in uh, oral histories, oral lore, especially where. But the unfortunate thing is that many of these are getting they tend to get forgotten over time. If they are written, like for example, in Coog, the folk traditions have been compiled way back in 1924 by a gentleman called Nadikeran Chinappa in a book called Patol Palame. It was recently translated in 2002 into English. So we are a bit lucky to have these folk traditions preserved, because now the youngsters, they go back to this book, they learn these songs, and then they sing these songs during ceremonies, etc. So if it wasn't for this book, many of these songs would have been forgotten way back in 1924 itself. So more or less, like where these songs are recorded, they are remembered. But we need to record these songs more, like communities across India, they need to record these folk traditions a lot more, and they need to uh, the youngsters need to learn this. There's another story. This is based on there's a Telugu folk tale, and there are many movies made on this. So there's in this there's one evil magician. He What he does is he turns a queen into a dog, and then kidnaps her, and then the king goes after him. But the magician, what he does is he turns the king and the king's brothers to stone statues. Then later, the son of the king and the queen, they come, and this person, he comes to the magician. He's still a young boy, and he rescues his parents from the magician through his cleverness. So that's one famous Telugu story. That's Comics have been made on the story, and movies have been made on the story. So there are many such stories, and animism, as we take it in India, like every river, every mountain is considered to be a god or a goddess. Like Ganga is a goddess, so Kaveri is a goddess. For us in Cook, we consider Kaveri to be our protector goddess, and the Himalayas, Vindhyas, they're all gods. So animism, it's part of Hinduism. It's part of folk traditions, the mainstream traditions. You can take it as it is. So there's a lot of oral traditions and other traditions in India. India is a very rich place for all these traditions.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating to hear. So we move forward with our next question to Savani ma'am. So in your career as a historian, archaeologist, and culture connoisseur, you come across a lot of material artifacts as well as books, oral or written, about the artifacts. Would you like to share any narrative pertaining to magic, sorcery, or witchcraft, etc.?
Uh, so we get lot of art, like in when we do archaeology, everything is material based, as you said, and every material has its own rule of how we can study it as per like how old it is or what material it is. So there are two ways of looking at things in archaeology. One is called as processual way of looking at it, which is more science based, like which tells you, okay, this is an object which is uh, and a sculpture or something like that, and it is made out of this material. It is this years old, and this is what how they would use it. But then archaeology or history is we are studying it about human behavior. So each object may have had different relations with people. So since we were talking about tribal cultures, rituals, so sometimes we get in Goa, there are many, like say sculpture would be looking like Mahishasur Mardini, but in local traditions it will have different names. And it's interesting like how or most of the deities in Goa are without any sculptural form. It could be just a simple stone, and it has its own name. It has its own jurisdiction. It has its own way of beliefs and what you can give, offerings and everything. It has its own constitution. But if an archaeologist sees after many years where that culture is completely lost, like many hundreds years later, you wouldn't know what it was. So it's a very in like very much in air sort of relationship of people and the object, or it could be anything. So that is very interesting. Secondly, we come across lot of this how people worship elements of nature. So there are areas like sacred groves, which are sacred forests, and there are rules of people. So a part of Goa, which is coastal, and another part is it's beneath. I mean, it's at the foothills of the Western Ghats. So which are very lush areas, and they are green areas throughout the year. So there are some forests which has medicinal values, and they are protected by a belief called Devrai, which is Devachi Rai. Dev is a god. It's a Konkani or Marathi word for god. And in that, it is said in some of the Devrais, if you cut one tree, the punishment is whoever cuts it, his family tree will be cut. So they believe something would happen to your family tree, so which means somebody in your family would die, or you have to pay, the tree with death or something bad happening in your family. So which in a way is a good, because when in some areas when total development or mining or what happening, they protected these forests because of these beliefs. So this is what we usually come across in Goa. Then we have this interesting concept of prasad. Okay, or prasad is not what we get served for food for eating. So this is an interesting concept in Goa. So the whole the murti of the deity is they take petals or any leaves, they dip it in the water and stick it to the whole, the murti or the sculpture, and you can ask your questions or problems or whatever you want to take blessings of the god or the goddess. And based on it's coded, like something falls from the hand side or something falls from the crown, it is taken as whatever is the answer. So either is like from the right side could be yes, left side could be no. And sometimes people would say maybe it's just normal science, like because it's dipped in the water and when the water dries it will automatically fall. But there have been cases where the petal has fallen within a second, and sometimes not for even 3 or 4 hours. and this is done in many of the temples, which could be typical temples which follows Vedic rituals or the Puranic rituals, or even temples which are of the semi-divines, or temples like Betar or Kalbhairav. And I've personally seen the priest asking, like literally shouting at the god, so which was something interesting for me to see, because he was literally had authority on the god, because the devotee who had come with his problem, and they were not getting into any solution, so he was literally shouting at the god with one of his hand on his waist, and like literally pointing fingers and saying, like, he has come to you, you have to protect him, he's your devotee, and please tell what is going wrong or something. So these, like this human and the connection of the divine, is something that interested me while I was doing my fieldwork.
That was really interesting and fascinating to hear, ma'am. So, Anand sir, can you, shall I put you the next question, or you will have to leave, you said early. So, is that
Quickly,
okay?
because up to 7 was I have another one in 7:5. So quickly you can ask and then I will leave. I'm sorry. 6 to 7 was the
That's
time. I
okay.
have something else to say. I'm really sorry.
That's okay, sir. So, our next question to you, sir, is that can you share some insights on the similarities between the indigenous and mainstream narratives pertaining to the demigods and superhuman capacities of characters?
I already said that no, there is not much of a difference. It merges in this thing like the Gandharvas, Yakshas are all mentioned in the tree spirits are all in the Puranas also. So where will you draw this line? Where will you draw the line between uh, the mainstream and non-mainstream religion in India? All the kind of there is no concept of fairy as such. We should not try to find equivalents. What is a fairy in Indian concept? There is nothing called fairy or elf or anything like that. We have tree spirits, which is Yakshas, Gandharvas, Kinnaras, or whatever is called in the local names, they are there. And most of the characters in our Puranas exhibit many of the characteristics of all these gods and goddesses and vice versa of different community of people. So many times they merge also. As I said about Kali, sometimes about Hanuman, sometimes Shiva comes as a god in many, like Varaha in this thing is not Varahamurti of Vishnu. It is Panjurli is Shiva, if I remember correctly. Isn't it, Nitin?
Yeah, the boar
Uh,
spirit, Panjali, yes.
Boar spirit is Shiva's this thing. In the Muttappan is again a mix of Shiva and Vishnu, but mostly it is Kalabhairava's this thing with a dog totem. So it merges in most of the time it merges. There is no such difference in. It's very funny that we talk about tribalism when the entire religion is a cluster of tribal religions. The Hinduism as such it's a cluster of this kind of beliefs where that Totemism is there, animism is there, the so-called paganism is there, spirit worship is there. These are part and parcel of the mainstream religion itself. Just because you give a Sanskrit name doesn't mean that it is something different or exotic or big. It's all the same.
True, true. Thank you so much for your insights, sir.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. I have to leave, so I am taking your leave, ma'am, Savani, ma'am, and Nitin.
So thanks a
I'm
lot,
taking
Anand sir.
leave. Thank you very
Uh,
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
I should apologize. I had to come a little late, so
you. No
yeah, I
issues, no
came
issues.
a little late.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot
Thank
for
you
your
very
time.
much. Please continue
thank
your
you.
discussion. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, my next question is for Nitin, sir. So, in your book Dakshin, you have written about local lores, myths, folk tales from Nilgiris. Would you like to share any interesting narrative about sorcery from the tribal communities of Nilgiri Hills?
Actually, I have written about folklore from all over South India, and I have focused on Coog actually. Nilgiris, to be frank, I have put in just one story, but I can speak on the topic. So,
Sure.
I mean, anything that couldn't be explained in the past was called supernatural or magic. So, any phenomena would be called, if it wasn't, if people weren't able to explain it, it would be called supernatural or magic. But now science tends to, I mean, science is able to explain everything. Like even if it's not possible to explain a phenomena right now, in future there is a possibility that science can explain something of phenomena. So the this lore, folklore, and all they are belief systems which various communities have, and we need to respect them because they contain the knowledge of the forefathers, what they gained, the literature that they cultivated, that they transmitted over generations from father to son. I mean, from the parent to the child. So this is what I would like to say about this thing, like what we call about myths, magic, and sorcery. And again, like when we speak of this magic and all, we find magic in the epics also. There's Ravana who uses black magic. We can say it's black magic against Sita, when he sends the demon to turn into a deer, the golden deer, the Mayamruga, which attracts Sita. So that is a sort of magic that we see in the epics as well. So I mean, as I said earlier, like one man's religion or beliefs will be dismissed as another man's superstition. So what is true in one religion will be false in will be considered false in another religion in the past. And so the worship of gods other than those belonging to one's own religion would be sometimes labeled as devil worship in the past, because we see this in the British records, the colonial records. So, for example, there's this manual of Cook written by Richter. He dismissed the native worship as he called the native worship as devil worship. So we see this in the narratives, in the colonial narratives. These come up in the colonial narratives. And sometimes, like for example, in the Nilgiris, it is said that in the Nilgiris there are the Todas, the Badagas, because you this question is about the Nilgiris that you had mentioned. I'm putting this across. So there are the Todas, the Badagas, the Kotas, the Kurubas, such tribal communities in the Nilgiris. And then as I mentioned, the Todas, they look after cattle. They rear buffaloes. And then the Kotas, they are more or less blacksmiths. Then the Badagas are the more numerous people over there. They are agriculturists. And the Kurubas, usually they used to be unfairly accused of sorcery in the past because of their illiteracy and their belief in various supernatural elements. So they used to they gather honey, they hunt wild animals, and there are Kurubas. There are a group of various tribes. They are found in Karnataka and Kerala also. And like again in the past, as Anand sir was saying, actually, I would suppose that what he meant to say was the coast from, in fact, from Maharashtra to Kerala was called the Parshuram Kshetra, because there's this belief that the sage Parshuram, he came to the edge of what was India at that time, and he threw his axe into the sea, and then the sea gave way, and it gave rise to this land, the coastal region of southwestern India. So all that is called Parshuram Kshetra. So there are common belief systems in, say, in the Tulu region in South Canara, the Mangalore side, in Coog, and in North Kerala. And what is called Teyam in North Kerala is called Tere in Coog, in Kodagu. So there's and also there are again, like Savani ma'am had spoken about sacred groves. There's a lot of sacred groves in Coog, and in Coog again, there's in every forest there'll be a stone. There won't be any statues as such. There'll be a stone in the middle of the forest, and every year offerings will be made to the stone. There's a belief that the sacred groves, there's the god of the forest called Ayappa, every forest has a specific Ayappa. So usually Ayappa is called Botekara Ayappa, the hunter god. So there's a belief that the hunter god Ayappa, he leads the spirits of the dead. Like when people die in Cook, they are worshipped as Karnas. So every family has an ancestor spirit who's worshipped. They are called the Karna if it's a male, and Karanchi if it's a female spirit. So then it's a belief that Ayappa will lead the spirits on hunts in the sacred groves. So for that reason, the Kodwas and other people of Kodugu, they would not enter these sacred groves. They were not supposed to cut trees. They were not supposed to encroach it, bring it under cultivation, and they were not supposed to hunt any animals over there. So these sacred groves were completely out of off bounds. But these days, these beliefs are all disappearing. So in the past, these beliefs it helped preserve the forest wealth. So that's how these beliefs actually were helpful. And when it comes to totems, Central India has a lot of totems. Like the Santals, they believe in these totems. They believe that various families came up from, they arose from an animal or an object or plant. And also there are in Cook there are family names which came from the name of an animal or name of a fruit. For example, there's the Checkera family, which comes from the chekke or the banana name. There's like that. There's the Balera, the Mangera. That is the banana family, the mango family. Again, there's the Pulianda family, which is the Puli means tiger in Cook. So totemism and animism, it's always been part of the local culture. And in southwestern Karnataka, in South Canara and Cook, the individuals over here in the past, they used to travel to North Kerala to study tantra and kalari and all. Like for example, in Japan, we find this concept of ninjas and all. They use magic during warfare and all. So this concept of using magic during warfare was there in India also, and especially in South India, it was like after the fall of Vijayanagar, it was all broken into small kingdoms. So this they used to believe that magic was used in warfare and all. And I think I think I taken up a lot of your time. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And yeah.
All right. So another, I think Savani ma'am has dropped out.
Okay.
So I'll ask the last question to you.
Okay.
I wanted you to share the perspective on how do you relate tribal myths, magic, sorcery with science as well as nature.
Okay. So like this as I said, these myths. They were stories that came up that were made by the forefathers, the ancestors, uh, in order to explain a phenomena, something, some like something as simple as rain. It would be explained by some phenomena like hailstones. For example, in Coog, there's one story about Ikutapa and his brothers and sister. So his sister Panangalatame cooks food, and then she gives food. It's like it's without salt, so it's tasteless. She gives it to her brothers, and one of the brothers, he throws it in the air, and the rice grains, it falls. So then he says, see how the hailstones fall. So that's one myth that was created to simply explain like how hailstorms used to happen. And then so everything, these myths, they were stories. They were reasons that the ancestors came up with to explain natural phenomena. So yeah, that's what I would like to add.
Thank you so much. So I think that brings us to the end of the session today. I hope Savni ma'am is joining. No, she's not. So let's end the session today. I thank all the panelists once again for sharing their invaluable perspectives on the topic. This is to remind that we are calling for submissions on tribal literature and tribal representation in literature, the details of which can be viewed on www.tellmeyourstory.biz. We will come back soon with our next panel discussion on the project. Till then, good night, everyone.
Thank you all, audience. Thank you,
Thank you.
Hemant. Thank you, Savani ma'am. Thank you, Anand sir. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.